Hey guys, welcome back. So a lot of you, being my students, have emailed me with questions about texture painting or palette knife painting. So when we're in the classroom, what we use is called joint compound. It comes in a big bucket like this from Walmart. I think the whole thing is maybe like $12. And then we mix just any sort of generic acrylic paint into a cup until we get the right consistency that is not too stiff, and it does go onto the canvas pretty well. The reason that we use joint compound is because number one, it's cheaper, but also because it comes in a huge tub where you get more for your money basically. Now if you are really serious about this and you don't mind spending a little extra, you want to buy modeling paste. And if you can find a flexible modeling paste, that's even better. The main problem we have with the joint compound is that if you don't have the right mixing ratio, or if you lay it on too thick in some places compared to others, the drying time changes a little bit and it can cause cracking in your painting, which is fine for if you're just learning how to do it and you want to get the technique of actually applying the paint onto a canvas, then that's good for learning. The other things that you'll need for the palette knife painting is obviously some palette knives. This one right here is very flat. These are good for just mixing. I don't necessarily like them for applying the texture and the paint onto a painting. I prefer the ones that have a bit of an angle. That way when you're painting you can keep it parallel to the surface of your canvas. And it also lets you get down right to it for detailed work and you don't lay your hand in it quite as much. The other things are just some acrylic paint, and any of the paint from Walmart works. I'm just using some the acrylic paint that's in the tubes, but normally I'm working with the 50-cent matte finish. Those are just the cheapest ones to find. They're pretty easy to find except for right now, but if you are able to find any, just grab some and pick some up. Get your stuff together and let's get started. So here where I'm starting with the background, I'm creating two different colors to start with. The first is a really light gray and the second is a darker gray. And the darker gray is going to go where there's overlaps. You can see my sketch, there's going to be flowers and petals, and where the petals overlap the background, I really want to apply a darker gray there to help the lighter colors of the foreground pop against that background. I'm also applying the paint in kind of like a loose X pattern. This basically is just to keep students from going straight across the canvas. You know, a lot of times in school, we want a really smooth background that's cohesive and everything's going the same way. But if you just loosely apply the paint in like a small X pattern, again, don't make it perfect because again, that doesn't fit the style of this type of painting. And now I'm getting ready to make the flowers, and you can see that the direction of the strokes changes. So as opposed to making the X's for the background, for the roses, I'm going to kind of imitate the petal movement of the roses. So it's going to be more of a spiral movement. And that's how all of the colors in the rose will kind of come together. It's very circular. Now for the hydrangeas, again, it's kind of mimicking the actual petals in those flowers. So it's just short little strokes with a darker color down at the bottom to show like where shadow is and kind of give it a three-dimensional form. And for those of you that have asked before, all of the colors that I'm using as opposed to white and black have been custom mixed, so they are not straight out of the tube or the bottle. And I would really encourage all of my students to practice their color mixing in order to make your magentas and your deeper blues and your blue greens and the coral colors. Those are going to be more vibrant and more unique if you are making them as opposed to just buying them out of the bottle. You can start with those, but then mix a little bit of each color or whatever colors you think would go with it. Instead of adding black, maybe you try navy blue to some of your colors to create darker shades. So now everything has dried completely for several hours, maybe like 12 hours. Let it dry because you don't want any water or moisture in your painting when you start to apply the resin. So the kind I'm using is from Dr. Crafty. It's good because it is a cheaper resin. However, I've noticed that it creates kind of like this cobblestone effect and it's not that smooth as glass. finish that you get with some of the other resins. So that's the only thing I would caution you on. I'll probably put like a really thin clear coat on top with a new kind of crystal clear resin as opposed to this Dr. Crafty, but the Dr. Crafty is good for at least building up those layers before that top coat. So all the resin that I buy, whether it's Dr. Crafty brand or the Pro Marine Supplies or the Crystal Clear, I make sure that it is a 1-to-1 ratio mixing. So that means you're pouring equal amounts of the epoxy and the hardener together. Once you pour those together, then you're going to mix it for 3 minutes. Now, 3 minutes is a good number. However, when we're in the classroom, a lot of times we try to short that a little bit. And if you don't mix it thoroughly for 3 minutes, then you will end up with like this gunky, gooey, sticky mess that is a pain to clean up. So I beg you, if you do this at home or if you work with resin at home, mix it for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Set a timer on your phone and mix it for 3 minutes. So now that the epoxy is mixed, I just pour it on and smooth it out. It is a self-leveling epoxy, but it is good to make sure that you have plenty on there to cover the ripples in your palette knife painting. That way you get a completely smooth surface and you don't have any of that paint sticking up out of the top. So once I've applied all the epoxy resin onto the surface of my painting, I'm going over it now with a heat gun, and this is going to get all of the air bubbles out of the epoxy, bring them to the surface so that they can pop, and we get that really smooth, clear finish on the surface of this desk. Alright guys, so that is it for now. I do plan on painting the desk at some point in time later in life. Maybe like a white or a light gray or something like that, but that's a project for another day. The next projects I'm going to be doing some videos on are actually casting with resin and making 3-dimensional pieces as opposed to 2-dimensional flat surfaces. Alright, I'll see you next time. Bye.